Hi, welcome to Luci's Cake Boulevard online professional baking course. In this video, I want to show you the basic ingredients that you need in order to bake cakes of different flavors and textures. Among the ingredients that we use, the first one is flour. Then we use sugar as well, leavening agents, baking fats, milk, eggs, cocoa powder, flavors and colors of different types. Let's look at the basic science behind the common ingredients that we use in baking. The first ingredient that we're going to look at is flour. The main function of flour in our cakes is to add to the structure of the cake so that we're able to handle it and manipulate it in different ways, especially when we're decorating. Cake flour has got a protein called gluten, which helps to form the structure of the cake. So when the flour is mixed with your wet ingredients, that is your milk or your eggs and whatnot, it starts to form bonds between the gluten molecules. This helps to add structure to your cake. You should be able to notice that different types of flour will give you different textures of cakes. The main focus we're going to be looking at is cake flour and all-purpose flour. So with cake flour typically has got a lower gluten content as compared to all-purpose flour. It definitely gives you a lighter and fluffier texture of your cake once it's finally baked. All-purpose flour has got a higher gluten content as compared to cake flour. It will give you a much denser cake texture when your cake is finally baked. However, both flours have got different applications in different types of cake recipes when you look at them. Kindly use the correct type of flour that is recommended for the particular recipe, as it's not every cake that needs to be dense, neither is it every cake that needs to be light and fluffy. The next ingredient that we're going to look at is sugar. Sugar has got different functions in our cakes. The main ones being to add flavor and to add structure to our baked cakes. First type of sugar that I would like to show you is brown sugar. It is darker in appearance, has a much stronger flavor profile as compared to the other sugars, and has got bigger sugar granules as compared to caster sugar, for example. Brown sugar typically is more acidic, and therefore it is usually used in combination with less acidic raising agents such as baking soda. Brown sugar is mostly recommended for cakes where alteration in color and in flavor will not be very noticeable. And that is in strong flavored cakes such as carrot cake or chocolate cake. The next type of sugar I would like to show you is household sugar. Household sugar has a lighter color in appearance and has a milder flavor profile as compared to brown sugar. It is also slightly less acidic as compared to brown sugar and has bigger sugar granules as compared to icing sugar or caster sugar. The next type of sugar I'd like to show you is caster sugar. So caster sugar is the commonest type of sugar that we use in baking cakes of different flavors and textures. It definitely has a whiter appearance and has finer sugar granules as compared to brown sugar and household sugar. Therefore, it is the one that you would find most bakers buying in bulk as compared to the other types. The other type of sugar I'd like to show you is icing sugar, also known as powdered sugar or confectioner's sugar. This type of sugar typically has very fine sugar granules, so it's very fine in texture and sometimes contains cornstarch to help it not to clump together. This type of sugar is commonly used in preparing our icing and on dusting out of our cakes and other baked goods. It is a very fine kind of sugar, and therefore it is the one that is mostly ideal for American buttercream preparation. This is just to show you the difference in appearance and in texture of the different types of sugars that we use in baking commonly, and just to encourage you to use the correct kind of sugar depending on the recipe that you're trying to follow. Next set of ingredients that we're going to look at are rising agents. The first rising agent we're going to look at is baking powder. Baking powder comes in different types, but the ones that we commonly find on the market are double action baking powders. Baking powder is composed of an acid and a base, and therefore the double action part starts when you add moisture, that is your wet ingredients, to your dry ingredients which contain baking powder. The reaction will start between the acid and the base in the baking powder, causing your cake batter to start rising. And then the second part of the double action baking powder will commence once you put your cake in the oven or expose it to heat. It will go on reacting further, and it will cause a rise in your baked goods, in this case cakes. It's important to note that because baking powder already contains an acid and a base, mostly you will not be required to add any other acidic ingredient to make it react. The next leavening agent that we're going to look at is baking soda or bicarbonate of soda. Carbonate of soda is basic, it's not acidic in nature. Therefore, you need to use it in combination with an acidic ingredient in order to activate it and to cause a reaction that will cause your cake batter to rise as you're baking it. Mostly, we combine baking soda with either baking powder in some recipes, with brown sugar, with fermented milk, or with natural cocoa powder, and so on. You might also be asked to add vinegar or lemon to your cake batter when you're using baking soda. Kindly note that the reactions of these two leavening agents are quite different from each other. They need different additions and ingredients to activate them. And therefore, if you're going to substitute any one of them in your recipe, make sure you do it safely, that you do not alter the final result of your cake. The next set of ingredients that we're going to look at are baking fats. The main function of baking fats is to add flavor. That is the first thing. To add to the tenderness of the cake, to be able to add to the moisture of the cake, as well as to add structure to the cake. Among the commonly used baking fats for cakes are butter, margarine, and vegetable oil. Some recipes might call for shortening and other types of baking fats, but these are the ones that we call. The first baking fat we're going to look at is butter. Butter is commonly made from real dairy, that is cream from cows. It can come in salted and unsalted varieties and has got different appearances, especially in terms of color, according to the manufacturing process. It usually contains fat, which is 80% and above, depending on the type, and that is the one that is ideal for baking. The next baking fat we're going to look at is margarine. Margarine is typically made from vegetable oils using different processes, and it usually contains 80% and above of fat with some moisture among other ingredients. Margarine is made to mimic butter in both appearance and in texture, and sometimes in taste as well. The next baking fat that we're going to look at is vegetable oil, which is plant-based. The recommended type is the type that is neutral in flavor, so that it does not have too much of an impact in the taste of your cake. It is mostly ideal for cakes that require a higher fat content, as it is usually 100% fat and little to no moisture in it. Vegetable oils typically ideal for cakes where you do not want the taste of the oil or the taste of the fat to have an impact in the overall flavor profile of your cake. The next set of ingredients that we're going to look at is milk. Milk in baking helps to add moisture to the cake batter and to the cake overall. It helps to add flavor, and it also helps to activate the dry ingredients. For example, it helps to activate the gluten in your wheat flour, and it also helps to activate the reaction in your baking powder as you combine your dry and your wet ingredients. The milk that is commonly used in baking is the full cream type of milk, which has at least 3.3% of fat in it. And there are different types of milk. We've got fresh milk and we've got fermented milk. Fresh milk typically contains less acid as compared to fermented milk, and therefore in different recipes you note that it might require you to add vinegar to your milk in order to make it more acidic and to help it mimic the fermented milk. However, ensure that you use the correct kind of milk depending on the recipe requirements. This is just to show you the difference in consistency in the two types of milk that we have. The next ingredient that we're going to look at is eggs. Eggs are usually high in protein and high in fat. The main function of eggs when it comes to cake baking is to help to form the structure of the cake due to the high protein content, and as well as to add flavor and color to the cake. You will notice that different types of cakes will require different parts of the egg. Sometimes you might be required to use only the egg white, sometimes you might be required to use the yolk only, or sometimes you might be required to use both, the egg white and the egg yolk, which is a whole egg. Kindly make sure that you use the correct quantity and the correct parts of the egg that are recommended for each particular recipe. It is also very important to note that the unwashed eggshell is usually contaminated with bacteria, and therefore it is recommended that each and every time you touch a raw egg which is unwashed, you make sure that you wash your hands thoroughly afterwards before handling any other ingredient or any other surface in your baking space. The next ingredient that we're going to look at is cocoa powder. Cocoa powder comes in different varieties, and they do have different properties according to what you're trying to achieve in your cake. Two main types of cocoa powder that we commonly use in cake baking are the natural cocoa powder and the Dutch processed cocoa powders. Natural cocoa powder is more acidic as compared to the Dutch processed cocoa powder. It is light brown in appearance and it has a milder flavor profile. It is important to note that different type of cake recipes will require a specific type of cocoa powder. In a recipe which requires natural cocoa powder, most of the time it is important because it needs to react with a basic ingredient such as baking soda in order to make the cake rise and so on. Then we've got the Dutch processed cocoa powder, which is less acidic as compared to the natural cocoa powder. It is usually darker in appearance as compared to the natural cocoa powder, but the degree of color or darkness of the color is totally dependent on how much processing it has undergone. We've got the lighter versions and we've got the typically very dark, almost black cocoa powders. These ones are more basic in nature and are usually in recipes where you do not need the cocoa to be acidic. You do not need it to react with any of the other ingredients in that manner, and especially where you need the cake to have a much stronger cocoa taste or flavor. The other set of ingredients that we're going to look at are flavors. So flavors are usually used to give the cake a defined taste and defined smell according to what you prefer. We have different types of flavors. For example, we've got vanilla, which can be in form of an essence or an extract. We've also got strawberry, lemon, chocolate, and so on. And these usually are used to enhance the taste and the smell of the cake, depending on the flavor that you are trying to achieve. You can use vanilla, for example, with a vanilla pod or the vanilla bean. You can also use strawberry with actual strawberries or on its own. You can use the lemon flavor or essence with the actual lemon liquid and the lemon zest. You can use the chocolate flavor with actual cocoa powder or on its own. It totally depends on what you're trying to achieve and how intense you want the flavor to be. We also have food colors, which come commonly in forms of either gel food color or powdered food color. The gel food color is already mixed with the liquid, and the powdered food color needs some liquid to be added to it to activate it and to give you the color intensity that you desire. Colors are commonly used to tint our icing, as in the final covering of our icing in our cakes, but it can also be used to color our cake batter to the desired color that we want to achieve. For example, if you're making a rainbow cake for a child, you might need to use some forms of food color in order to tint the cake batter. I hope this video has been helpful. Please give me feedback in my inbox or through the comments, and happy baking!